Hey everybody. So the US Open tennis tournament is presently going on. They're winding down. They're in the second week. And I like to play tennis. I like watching tennis. The US Open is the easiest one to watch since there isn't any big time differences like in the other Grand Slam events that go on in Australia, UK, Paris. And I've noticed something in the coverage this year that I've never noticed ever before. They've introduced something into the narrative when they're calling the games. And so, for instance, it's also, there was a New York Times article. I was reading it after one of the favorites, Coco Gauff, the kind of heir apparent to Serena Williams. And she lost to Emma Navarro. And the New York Times wrote in their article about it, they said, everything about them, these two women, everything about them appears in contrast. Gauff is a product of the expanding black middle class. Navarro is the daughter of a banker, and her family is among the wealthiest in the country. And so into this article about tennis, they have to introduce race, they have to introduce financial standing. And it's come up again, there's another player, Jessica Pegula, who's the daughter of a billionaire. And it recently also came up in hockey. There's a fellow, Zach Hyman, who, by the way, happens to be Jewish. And he was the third highest goal scorer this past year. And he had a fantastic playoffs as well with the Edmonton Oilers. He used to be on the Toronto Maple Leafs. They should have never let him go, but we'll leave that for now. Fantastic player. And some idiot, some podcast guy, was talking about attributing some of his success, a lot of his success, to the fact that he comes from wealthy parents. And so this is kind of like the underlying theme over here. This part of this woke narrative of white privilege, that these people who come from financially successful backgrounds, they got a leg up, they can have an advantage over others. But think of it for a second. Take these two tennis players whose families are billionaires, generational money. They don't have to do anything. They could coast for the rest of their life and be fine. And in a certain sense, it's a greater challenge to overcome that. You don't have to do this to make money. A lot of people, they work very hard because they got to do it to make money. These people, they don't have to make money. And yet they're out there and they're working their behinds off to become successful. And the critics of this guy who wrote about Zach Hyman pointed out, it doesn't have to do with white privilege. It doesn't have to do with financial success of your family. To get to that level, to score as many goals as Zach Hyman did in the NHL on a professional level, it's not a question of financial backing. Of course, that helps on some level. Maybe a tiny, tiny percent. 99% of it is grinding, is the work that they put in, the practice. I mean, just the other day I was playing tennis and there's a young Israeli guy in my neighborhood in Oak Ridge, and I'd seen him playing. He's very, very, very good. One of the best players I've seen in the neighborhood. And he's teaching his daughter to play. And she's 15 years old, and I'm schmoozing with them. And he was a good player. Was he ranked? I don't know. He's from Israel. He said when he was 15, he played 4 hours a day. Every day he was on the court 4 hours a day. For the Emma Navarros and the Pegulas to get to the point where they do, to get to the semifinals of a Grand Slam, that's not because your father's a billionaire. It's because you put in countless, endless amount of hours grinding, working, pushing yourself to a degree. So let's not believe this white privilege business. You know, they accuse us Jewish people as being people of white privilege. You know, my father was a Holocaust survivor, and all his peers were like that. And I remember a lot of them were very, very successful. They didn't come from white privilege. They had spoken with the accent. They weren't tall and good looking. They didn't have an amazing education. They just worked very, very, very hard. And so, unfortunately, this is like seeped into our society where people's success is a result not of the hard work that they do, but of some special class that they're born into. don't believe it. Just because these two women had come from homes of billionaires, if anything, that was a greater challenge that they had to overcome to get to the place that they are right now. All of us have talents and opportunities, and with God's help, not white privilege, we become successful. Have a good Shabbat.